Of course, in psychology, the problem, I don't know what would be the parallel in shamanism, but in psychology the problem is that we have a wide spectrum of schools, and there is basically no agreement as to what are the basic motivating forces in the psyche, why the symptoms come, what the symptoms mean, and the tremendous disagreement what you should do for therapy. So
yeah, I think you have a much harder job, because we use core shamanism, and we use the basic principles that already have been worked out.
Yeah, so if you have a problem, you can flip a coin, you can choose a psychological or psychotherapeutic school, and each of them will tell you something else and ask you to do something else. So it's enormously simplifies it if you can connect with this inner healer and you simply support what is happening.
Now, one of the nice things about shamanism is that if you do die, you don't have to blame yourself. But if you're an inner healer and you die, then you fail. Mm-hmm. What does that say about the inner healing model? Everybody fails in the end. I'm just asking.
Well, if you consider it a failure, I mean...
That's a perfect answer. Yeah. That's very good.
I mean, if you were a Tibetan, I mean, that's your big opportunity, for not just healing, but for stepping out of the cycle of death, rebirth altogether.
That's a magnificent answer. But then the question is, why bother to heal at all?
People have experiences of going back to the creative principle, whichever way you want to call it.
Not God.
Brahman, the Tao.
We can't say God.
You can say God.
Can we say Great Spirit?
Sure.
Okay.
We see it as the ultimate goal of the spiritual journey to. In certain systems, to go there and then sort of merge with the creative principle, with the divine. But when you get there, when you have the experience, you realize there's a problem, because if that were all there is, then it would be all that great, the creation would never happen. I mean, that creative principle would just stay in this undifferentiated state and would never...
well, I know you've been there, and I've been there too, and it's awfully nice. And when I'm there, I don't care what happens.
So the creation becomes like an adventure in consciousness.
I don't care if they do any more creation or not. Do you, when you're there?
Well, I think there is a sense that there should be something complementing it. In Kabbalah they talked about the fact that God created the world out of boredom. That there was the kind of a monotony in that undifferentiated state, and that, or the Hindus talk about Leela. It's a cosmic movie.
I have another suggestion. It's wonderful to hear you talk, and but this business of merging, whether it's with an animal, or with a deity, or with other aspects of the cosmos, and ultimately, in my own experience, uniting with the great hidden universe, or whatever we want to call it. Great Spirit is okay, but I don't personalize it, and I don't think you do either, probably. And you can have experiences of dying, and you're told to come back to do your work. And what you've done, you've merged with this tremendous power you talked about, but you can bring it back to alleviate, as a healer, human suffering and alleviate pain. And you bring back this compassion you encounter. I'd like to come back to that, whether the subject of compassion. But it seems to me that it is not a dead end. It may be when you die, it may not be. But for the shaman, it's a teaching experience, an experience of merging with power and bringing that power for application here. Does any of that resonate with your students or your work?
Very much so. I think, they feel a connection to Buddhism, to the difference between Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhism. Like in Hinayana Buddhism, the original Buddhism, the idea was that this is a kind of a realm of suffering, and you want to check out, you want to go out, reach nirvana. Nirvana is a term that's related to wind and means basically evanescence, to blowing off the torches of life, sort of moving into non-existence and achieving a personal liberation. But then in Mahayana, where you have the ideal or the archetype of the bodhisattva, the idea is that you come close to that experience, but then you come back and you help others. So in Mahayana, you can reach nirvana not by leaving the world, but by reducing significantly what they call three poisons, which is aggression, your aggression towards others, anger. The second one would be desire leading to attachment. And the third one would be avidya, which means ignorance, not understanding who you are, not understanding the nature of
course,
reality.
That's Tibetan Buddhism, and it's heavily influenced by shamanism in itself.
Yes,
so Tibetan Buddhism, in a way, is already a synthesis to some degree. Yeah.
In Tibetan Buddhism, you have, for example, a lot of the element of dismemberment and so on, and sacrifice that comes from the Bon tradition. So there's a real connection there between the Eastern spiritual philosophies and shamanism. We actually see people in the breathwork whose experiences would be repeatedly shamanic. Normally the experiences can go in different directions. So people who repeatedly have experiences that are shamanic, and then very frequently with very, very fascinating synchronicities. So we did a training in a place called Pocket Ranch, which is in Geyserville, north of San Francisco. It's in a very wooded area in the mountains. And this one woman in the workshop had a powerful experience of with an owl, and identified this owl as the spirit animal. And then immediately after the session went for a walk and actually found remnants of an owl and brought it back. And then the next day the workshop ended and she was driving home and she noticed that something was moving on the side of the road, and there was a big horned owl wounded. And so she stopped the car and went, and the owl led her to pick him or her up, take home, and sort of nurse to health. So, that doesn't happen every day. So some of the people really choose in the breathwork the shamanic journey, or in psychedelic work.